Hi everyone, Sailor Jupiter, Sailor King World, Lita here. And today we're going to talk about my old, so we're going to talk about my old, about folks that are always down on the Deke Sailor Moon. And I know that I have talked many times about folks being down or scathing Deke Sailor Moon for all kinds of things. Either for the shifting of names, or the shifting of street names, or the shifting of near names, or how worship was handled, how unstraightness was handled, how some of the wrestling and fighting was skimmed it out, how blood was handled, how two sagas became one, how some sagas were just skipped over altogether. And it just really is sad how folks can say a lot of mean things about it. Now, I get it. Everybody has their likes and their unlikes, and they got the freedom for what their belief is or what their thought or take is. Now, first off, Deke Sailor Moon, or should I now call it Wild Brian's Sailor Moon, isn't all that bad. They will say it's bad, but it's not. Every time that I watch the Deke Sailor Moon, and Deke Sailor Moon's about 30 years old. So yeah, this Sailor Moon is old. It is so old that it's not on disc. It was put on tape back in the day, but it's not on disc. And if anyone says it is, well, either they made a fake disc set. Now, the names do not irk me. Why am I going to make a big deal about Daunish borrowed names, some of them I know, some of them I don't know, being shifted out for either Hellenish, Latinish, Frenchish, Hebrewish, or Spanish, or should we also say Farsius or Blacklandish borrowed names, which most folks who speak English would know, due to the grounds that English borrowed more names from those speeches. And they didn't borrow so many names from Daunish, though. Sorry. So why would I be irked or angered over that? Why make a big deal about that? Why do some folks like to make a big deal and say, oh, I don't like the name Lita. I don't like that Latinist borrow name Lita. Or it should have been the Daunish borrow name Mukofo. Well, I'm Lita, and I never had a bind with being called Lita, so why folks made a big deal of the names being shifted is way beyond me. The next thing they like to make a big deal about is skimming. Now, they're going to make a big deal about blood being skimmed out. Oh, you took all the blood out of the fights. Now, did they take all the blood out of the fights? I don't know. But they make a big deal out of it. And they also talk about how some of the big things that happen in these fights, that they skimmed the wrestling, they skimmed the fighting. No, they didn't. They didn't really skim any of the wrestling or the fighting. But some folks are going to say they skimmed the blood. Yeah, they skimmed the blood. So what? You going to make a big deal about blood being skimmed out of your drawing show fights? I guess some folks do. Now, the other thing that they also bring up to why this was a bad take on the Deke Sailor Moon is that they bring up how the sailor fighters were taken by the Dark Kingdom instead of being slain as they were in Viz. Well, why make a big deal out of it? I didn't make a big deal out of it. That was more greater than what truly happened. Because in a Viz world, which is not our world, in the Viz world, yeah, everyone dies. So why is it so bad in the Deke world, which is not the Viz world, that we're still alive? So Why make a big deal about that? I don't understand it at all. But they do. The next thing they might make a big deal out of that they really should not, was the skimming of the unstraight. Now I know that nowadays the open-mindedness, the trust, the understanding, of anyone who is unstraight and what it means to be unstraight is handled a lot more greater than it was back then. You see, Deke and later on Pioneer, we're talking about Deke here, they were worried that the bearers and teachers and worship leaders and worship elders, they weren't worried about them. They were also worried about UPN and WB and USA and Cartoon not knowing how to handle two unstraight folks and how to do something. And I know you folks think I know a lot of folks out there, nowadays there's a lot, and folks know how to deal with it, they know how to handle it. But back then they didn't know how to handle it. So Deke did that so WB and UPN wouldn't freak out over it. So bearers watching it with their children wouldn't freak out over it. Or teachers that somehow learned about it wouldn't freak out over it. Or worship elders wouldn't watch it and somehow freak out over it. So, yeah, nowadays, a lot more folks out there nowadays, the open-mindedness, the trust, the understanding, the open-mindedness, of handling folks who are unstraight is greater than what it was. I'm not saying it's flawless, but it's greater than where it was. And it was a thing of its time. Nowadays, that kind of a thing wouldn't fly, but back then, the mindset and the standard was what it was at that time. Now, if you overlook all those things that they make a big deal about, the Deke Sailor Moon, or should I call it Wild Brine Sailor Moon, you got a good Sailor Moon. All right? Now, is it flawless? No, it's not flawless. But I'm not going to be one of those folks out there that's going to let all those things take away from a good saga, a good tale. It's still Sailor Moon. The sagas still play out the same way they do. Yes, it's true that some of the sagas of the first following were skipped over, and one of the two following due to it being lost. But you got a watchable Sailor Moon. And if you're willing to deal with names, and you see, as long as you can deal with names being shifted, street near names being shifted, Zoisite being a woman in this world, the sailor fighters being kidnapped instead of slain by the Dark Kingdom in this world, and some other things, if you're willing to overlook all that, you got a watchable Sailor Moon. I'm sorry. All right? So anyway, give this film a like, share and playlist it, and give us your thought on the Deke Glee Sailor Moon, which is now 30 years old, and whoever happens to own it these days, or who has ownership or double right over it, I don't know. I, Sailor Jupiter, Sailor King Rolita, and I'll see you later.